There we are. Yay!
Yay.
We got it. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Charli, the book mama.
And I'm Stephanie Palmer, the grammar queen.
And we are here for a little writer's therapy.
Yay!
I don't have any surprises for you today.
I'm so glad. I probably, you know what? I don't know if I could do surprises today.
Our surprise was that we got to do this without Darren Palmer in the building.
Yes. That's the surprise. So we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. And he's not going to
So see this one time.
Yeah, this one time. Yeah.
Okay, so we're coming to you today with some writing and editing tips. So we were talking about there's a big difference between ghostwriting and editing.
Yes, there is a huge difference.
So do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite?
Do you prefer one over the other?
I do like ghostwriting. I like helping develop the story, but I'm more of the give me some content and I can work with that instead of going from a blank slate.
So for those of you who don't know, ghostwriting is not like googly boogly, you know, it's that just came out like really. It's not Casper. There's not like clinking change and scary music in the background or anything like that. Ghostwriting is simply when you are writing someone's story for them. You are helping them create a document that is in book form, that it has relevance and it has a purpose, but they need someone with your skills to get it from their brains to the paper or to the computer. And so they just don't have that understanding and that skill and that ability to do that. So I like ghostwriting.
Yes, I knew she did. I knew she did.
I like ghostwriting because I love to share people's stories, but it's not any less or more valuable than editing. They just have their own place. Right. Yes. So, so in case anybody didn't know, you know, there's really a very significant difference. And so today we really want to talk to you for basic kinds of editing when it comes to books, because people often ask us, like, well, how bad was it? That's my favorite term. How bad was it?
I think I asked you that the other day.
Right. I mean, we ask each other that. I mean, we have other editors on this, like, how bad was it? So it's not that it's bad. It's just different levels of editing that we have to consider.
Right.
You know, we actually have special terms for them.
Do we?
Yeah, we do. Well, but people across our field do.
Got it. Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought you meant like in-house.
No, we don't have like a secret.
I didn't get that memo.
No, we don't have a secret self-published in 30 days language, or it's not
maybe we should create that. We could.
No, I do not have time for that. Okay, but I do know some great YouTube channels if you want to learn Klingon. Okay, all right. Do you know what Klingon is?
I have no idea.
Oh my goodness, we're gonna get comments on that. Okay, so it's Star Trek.
Oh yeah, see, nope.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's not. It's not Star Trek.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes. For a minute, I thought, like, no, I got it wrong. It's Star Wars, but it's actually Star Trek. Anyway, okay. So there are 4 basic kinds of editing. Like 2 of them they really involve the writer.
Yes.
And 2 of them are after the writer's given their blessing.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the first one that involves the writer?
Content editing.
Content editing. Okay. So how would you describe that in Stephanie terminology?
Content editing to me is, I guess, breaking down the concept of the book, making sure that it is lined out, because it's sort of like, and I'm skipping ahead because it kind of ties in with developmental editing, but I want to say, really, you're really looking for gaps, holes, and things of that sort is how I grasp it. But I do more of the developmental editing than I do content editing.
Okay. So, right. So we do a lot of developmental, and we'll get to that in a second, but there's chunks, right? There's chunks to a book. So let's say somebody was writing a book about business, right?
Okay.
So there would be a chunk where they say, this is how I got into this business. And then there's going to be a chunk where this is where I screwed up and these are all the mistakes I made in this business.
Right.
And then there's going to be a chunk where, hey, I learned this skill and it made me a lot of money. And there's that chunk. And then at the end, it's maybe a kind of a coaching chapter, like, hey, this is what you can do to incorporate the same steps that I did and try to make it work for you. Right. So you have these chunks, right? And sometimes in content editing, we will get a manuscript and somebody left a chunk out. Or they might have, let's say there's 4 or 5 chunks and one chunk was really, really weak. Mm-hmm. And so that's content. And we can't make up that content for the writer. Right. That's when ghostwriting comes in. Yeah. Okay. And if we're editing, we're not ghostwriting, then we're going to send it back to the author and we're going to say, hey, sugar plum honey dumpling. I'm from the South, so that's what I would say. Sugar plum honey dumpling. You're weak here and you need to beef this up because the reader is going to be left wondering what you're getting at or what happened or why or what relevance does this nugget have? And so that's content. But that leads into the next part because it's like you said, they're so close. We almost can't talk about one without the other. And that's developmental editing. Yes. Okay. And so developmental is when you really start to take all of those chunks and you start to link them. Yes. Right? Okay, so you have every chunk, you have all your content, but it just doesn't flow. Right. Right. So can you think of like an example of flow?
Well, I just look for the missing gaps, the pieces as far as lining out. I do know as far as tenses and everything, of course, that comes, that can come later because you want to get the brunt work of it lined out. I want you to help me on the flow because I think you're the flow queen.
That's kind of one of the things that I really love. Okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have passed the ball to you. I'll take it back down the court.
Yeah, surprises. You. She did one in the middle. Yeah,
all right. Okay, look, when you're talking, it also involves formatting.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
All right, so some of it is about verbiage, and some of it is about formatting. Formatting is how it's presented on the page. It's how it looks when the reader gets to it. Okay, so let's talk about verbiage first. So let's say I have 10 chapters. Mm-hmm. At the end of chapter 1, I want the reader to be anticipating what's going to happen in chapter 2. All right. That doesn't mean you have to be obvious. In the next chapter, we're going to, it might be that simple, but it doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be that obvious. Right. But there is a way to craft language so that you flow from one chapter to the other. So when you get to, chapter 3, you're not going, why am I reading this? What does this have to do? Sometimes flow has to do with order. So we remember a minute ago, I was talking about a book about business, right? And you notice I started with, this is where I was. Right. This is what I did. This is what I learned. And this is what I want you to learn. Okay. So that's like pretty basic, but at the same time, there's a flow to that. Okay. Now, formatting is really key. So we're working on a book right now where the author has done a really creative job of putting the chapter title. And actually, this is not the first author that's done this, but they took the chapter title and then they put, instead of a quote, they actually quoted some lyrics to a song. And that is actually a song that is meant to be motivational for that part of the book. So it's a book about business, and she's trying to teach some concepts in business. And it's going to be a really interesting book because she's really presented some very unique songs across all different genres of music that you can kind of listen to. And so you kind of get in your little groove. I'm dancing to the quiet music in my mind. All right. But did you hear it?
I didn't.
She didn't hear my music,
maybe we're not in tune today.
I need some water. Oh, my God. Okay, but that's what it's about. So format. So last week we talked about devotionals, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about how you'll present a real experience, and you just write a little bit about it, and then you may present a scripture, and then you have a moment where you reflect as the reader. And if it's that flow in every single chapter or in every single day of the devotion, the flow is there because you kind of have that formatting that sets you up as a reader and helps you comprehend where you're at in the process of the devotional. So that's what I'm talking about,
right.
you know? Okay, so that's the developmental part. Now, there's another part of development that I really, really, really love, and that's language. Yeah, because we talk about that a lot. If you watch us every week, which surely we have a fan club somewhere.
Maybe so, yes. Y'all write into us and let us know your fans.
Yes, please send us mail. Or you could just comment. That's fine, too. Okay, but the point is that with language, sometimes you have sarcasm and humor, and sometimes you're really to the point and you're really serious, and sometimes some people use cursing. That's not my personal preference, but you know, sometimes they feel that enhances what they're trying to say. And then there's also age-appropriate language. So someone sends us a book and they say it's a preteen fiction piece. You know, it's a sci-fi preteen book. Well, that's the language we're going to be looking for. We're not going to be looking for college-level language, right? And so when you're in that developmental stage and you're getting developmental edits, the editor could very possibly say, how old is your reader again? You know, we've had a couple of children's books.
Yes.
And even those have these stages. And we've sent it back and said, I don't think that third graders are going to know what a biosphere is, but it's great that you do.
Right.
You know, and so we have to be really sensitive to that, right?
Yes.
Sometimes I write with humor and sarcasm.
Yes.
I don't know why I would do that. I'm such a serious person.
She's not telling the truth right now, y'all. She's not telling the truth.
Y'all, I'm going to cut up to the core. Okay. But if I started out, if I had 10 chapters in a book and the first 3 chapters are really sarcastic and funny and filled with humor, and then the rest of the book is, you know,
dry.
Dry. I was trying to think of a nice way to say that. Thank you. Thank you. So then you've got a language issue because that flow is not there.
Right.
Okay. And there's even a way to add humor in one part of a chapter and then be serious in the rest of the chapter. Right. Okay. So the Justas comes to mind. We recently had a co-authored book. It was Shantavia Shropshire and Kay Young.
Yes.
And they wrote a great book, Fake It Till You Make It, right? Yeah, really great book. But they talked about the Justas, okay? And a whole chapter was dedicated to the Justas. Do you remember what the Justas are?
You know what? I did not read that book.
Oh, man.
Fill me in.
Okay, so the Justas, if I had just seen what I was doing before I did it, then I probably wouldn't have done it. Or I'm just a secretary. I'm just an editor. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just a small church pastor. Do you see what I'm saying? It's minimizing yourself. And so they called it the Justas. And because we do that sometimes, we say, well, I'm just and so they called it the Justas. So they made up a word, but at the same time, that flow was in that chapter because they incorporated it through the whole chapter. And actually, even in later chapters, because they developed it so well. I want to say it was early on, like maybe the second or third chapter. So they developed it so well early on that they were able to reference it later in the book. Okay. So that's when that developmental part is really good. And that's with a made up word.
Right.
So maybe it'll be in dictionary.com by this time next year.
Maybe so.
Right? We should write them and say, you should put Justa in there. Watch, somebody's going to tell me it's already in there. Okay. So there's 2 more kinds of editing. So those first 2 really involve the author because it's absolutely mandatory that the author has say so in
Right.
that level. Okay, but then the next ones are more on us as editors. So what are they?
The copy editing and the proofreading.
Yeah. So talk to me about copy editing.
Copy
Is that
editing.
where you copy everything down?
No. That is.
It
more
sounds
of a-
like you copy everything down.
It's.
Did
more
you
of
want
a-
to talk?
I do. What? See, look, she's throwing surprises. No, copy editing is more of like the grammar, the tenses, all of that, making sure, what Charli calls the tweaky things. It just needs a little tweak. So that is when the tweaking comes in, is for the copy editing, making sure that the verb tenses are lined out, making sure that spelling is huge. And we even recently had someone from a client from Canada, so the spelling was a little different, and we were kind of red flagging some things, but because of the different language, it was different. So like, I guess the neighbor had O-U-R, or
Right.
So just making sure that spelling is lined out, making sure that your tenses, you stay in the right tense. If you're speaking in third person, you don't want to jump back to first person, just within that same paragraph.
Right.
You kind of want to break that up if you are going to speak to the reader and then speak about yourself. So that's to me
That's
what
a
copy
really
editing.
good, yeah, that's a really good example too. So let's talk about that neighbor word for a minute. So they spelled neighbor Neighbour, but we didn't do that consistently throughout the book, and we had to go back and change some of those things so that we made sure that it was consistent to the way the author wanted it.
Yes.
All throughout the book. And that's a really important step, because you want to be consistent throughout the book. Just like I said that those ladies had used the word just as, we had to make sure that it was punctuate. Like sometimes software thinks it's smarter than we are, like we didn't invent it. I'm pretty sure that software is smarter than I am, but
I don't know. That's up for debate.
Okay.
Maybe
well,
a next episode.
I'm just an editor. I can't do it. Anyway, so, but it would catch little things, like it might try to put an apostrophe in there sometime and make it like Justa had possession, and it wasn't supposed to do that. So we had to go back in and make sure that there was consistency,
right?
Because that's really important. Sometimes we have to make sure that certain words that are hyphenated consistently
right.
all the way through. And so it's very tedious work. It can be very tedious work, but it really matters, because in the end, that's where you really polish the brass, so to speak,
Yes.
And you really make sure that it's fine-tuned. Okay. And the last is proofreading.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is proofreading? Because that doesn't even have the word editing in it.
It doesn't, but that is reading it once the author has given their blessing and they are ready to go to the next step of publishing. It is reading over everything and, dotting those I's, crossing those T's, and checking everything last minute before not last minute, but right before we go to interior design. It's
literally the 11th hour.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is right there at the finish line, and it's proving it, making sure that all the other components of the editing has been completed.
Right. And it's when we have that proof copy.
Yeah. Yes.
That's proof.
Yeah.
They share a word.
Yeah, they do.
I know. Isn't that brilliant? They share a word. Okay. But it's when we have the proof copy and we've got it in our hands, we can actually read through it like a book and just make sure that sometimes there's an extra period that shows up. It's like they just need a friend.
Yeah. Or spaces, extra spaces.
Right. Or it could just look funny on the page. Or there's just kinds of little bitty things. But again, it's really important, because if you've worked through all of these stages of editing with an editor and you've put in all this work to make sure that your content is solid, that it's complete and thorough, and that you have your flow, and it goes from one chapter to the other, and it's an easy read. And then you've gone through the process of looking for all those misspellings and looking for all the sentence structures and the tenses and making sure all the language is the same. This is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And so then once you've done all that, to not proofread it in the
Right.
end, that's just like not putting the little star on top of the Christmas tree.
Right? Yeah.
Do
Definitely.
you put a star on your Christmas tree?
I think I have an angel. I think it's an angel. It might be a star.
Okay,
I switch it
angels
up.
work. I like angels. Yeah, I'm Charli. I have angels.
Yeah.
She didn't know
Well,
that.
I will say something. I want to add on that proofreading piece, because I think we really have two phases of proofreading. So we proofread before it goes to interior design, and then we proofread the proof copy. So with that being said, and I know you are really, really good about sharing with our authors, so I'm going to quiz you for a second. What is one thing that we do not do when we get to that proofreading phase?
We do not change content.
She got it right, y'all. She got it right. We do not change content once you get to the proofreading phase, because guess what? The editing process could be ongoing depending on the author, and they want to keep tweaking things, because guess what? You're always going to be able to enhance it. You're always going to be able to add extra content. But guess what? When you get to that proofreading phase, anything else that you want to add, save it for book 2. Just save it for book 2. Just start you a new document, whatever that looks like for you, because when we get to that proofreading phase, no more content, more content. We are not going to keep going back and forth and passing the ball back and forth over and over to get the book done.
You don't get to come in and say, this one time my grandma said.
No.
Grandma should have said it earlier.
Nope. She should have said it in chapter 2. We're done. We're done. No more content. No additional content.
Okay, I'd like to add something.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so as an author, I say this with love. See my love face. Do not wait until the end to edit.
Please
Do
don't.
not wait
Please don't.
until the very end and go, oh my gosh, I'm about to have a book and it's going to be for the entire world to see. I might better check it. No, you should have checked it way back in the
Content
beginning.
and developmental editing is
man.
when you should have reviewed it.
We see this so often, guys. And here's the thing is when you're writing, you also have life going on. And we understand that because we've done it.
Yes.
Okay. And so it's so important
Yes.
that you take the whole process seriously.
Yes.
And that you invest time into every level of the process, because it's going to cause a lot of frustration for you and a lot of internal disappointment for you and for us when you come up at the end and that's, you want to change stuff. It's not just about content changes. It's about investing yourself through the whole process.
Yes.
And again, we say this with love, that it's really important that you be part of the process all the way through.
Yes.
It's you don't have a dump truck. Like you don't show up to self-publish and dump off your book and then you're done.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. It's more like a train where you hook up to our engine and you have a car and we're going to pull you along and we're going to share the coal, so to speak. That was an analogy.
That was good.
Wow.
Write that down.
Right? Okay. Brilliant things that Dr. Charli says. Doesn't happen very often, but take advantage of it. Okay. So do you have anything else? There's a lot to editing that people really don't. They really don't.
Well, see, and a lot of people, what I really think happens is once they think the work takes place once or while they're writing, and that is one phase of it. But the real work starts once you submit your rough draft, because that's when you have someone that may not know you, that may or may not know you. But that's when you get the suggestions, the comments for the content editing. That's, the development and everything else. A lot of times the writers and the authors that come to us think that it goes from rough draft to proofreading and we're ready. And that's not how it goes. Just to even, sidestep and share, our process. we have primary editors. So we assign a primary editor to each author. That primary editor walks them through every step, every phase of the editing. And then from there, we have a secondary editor come in and do all of that. So guess what? That secondary editor could do some content or some developmental editing depending on, the layout and the formatting of the book. So, you may go back and forth, but you definitely need to know that it doesn't go from rough draft to proofreading. There are several phases that take place so that we can polish it and make the author, enhance the author's writing is really our whole objective, is to make sure that it's good.
The other thing that occurred to me while Stephanie was talking was sometimes we get books from authors and we get them a chapter at a time because they're sending them in to us as they're writing. And that's fantastic. We love that. It's accountability and it helps them get it done, to have that weekly goal. But just because you send us a chapter doesn't mean that it's a good idea for us to start editing. Okay, we need the book in full because remember at the beginning when we were talking about content editing and developmental editing, we need to know that all the chunks are there. We can't tell you where the holes are if we only have half a book,
right?
Or even 3/4 of a book.
Yes.
So we don't go in and just edit a chapter because we need the whole book. It's just like a painting. Michelangelo's had that painting Creation. And back in the 90s, they took it where it was just the fingers, and they like cut out just where the fingers were meeting. You remember that?
No.
Oh, God,
I just shake my head. I shake my head yes in agreement. Because
someone listening is going to remember that Michelangelo's Creation that's on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Italy. Okay, it's this whole beautiful picture, but they took just the fingers and they cut them out. And from an artsy-fartsy's perspective, I get why they did that. But it doesn't give the real value at painting because there's so much. I'm going to have to show you a picture of that painting. I'm going to have to walk you through it. I'm going to have to, we're going to have an art lesson when this is over, y'all. But there's so much to that specific painting that just that little bit didn't do it. It doesn't make the whole message of that particular painting called Creation. It doesn't resonate. Okay, when you see that little snippet. And it's the same thing with your chapters. We can't just take a chapter and be able to start editing and be able to give you quality feedback.
Right.
We have to have the whole thing.
Right.
I think in the Old Testament they called it the whole Megillah. It meant the whole big picture.
Yes.
So anyway, okay.
Yes. And with that being said, even when you submit your rough draft, it still might not be finished. You may still have to add additional chapters because there are some missing links. So, like I said before, the work really begins once you send in your rough draft. Like you think that writing the rough draft is great. It's great. And it's something that, yes, it's accomplishment. So pat yourself on the back.
That's the first step.
Yes, that's the first step. So you are nowhere near the finish line. Basically, you have done the prelims and you were just really strict. Yeah, you've qualified. There you go. You have qualified. Then the work really begins. So commit to and we've even talked about commitment because I mean it's a really huge component. So commit to the entire process and don't rush it. Don't rush it. And like Charli said earlier, like the book mama said, and you better listen to your book mama. Make sure that you are with us every step of the way because we're holding your hand, but you have to hold our hand too. Like it's a collaborative effort. Yes, we're doing it together.
I think I'm all out of wisdom.
I am too. We're gonna have to soak up some for next week.
Right?
Soak up some for next week.
But it's been fun, and we always enjoy getting on here every week and sharing, all these writing tips and editing tips with you. And we would love to hear feedback from you. And of course, if you have a book that you would like to publish, and it doesn't matter what the genre is, we would love to hear you at selfpublishin30days.com. And if you have questions about the process, We are very, very happy to schedule a consultation with you,
Yes.
and you can learn more about what we do and how we do it, and you will get to hear a lot more wisdom from us.
Yes. And one last parting piece of advice, because you shared something this morning. Do not wait until you're finished with the manuscript to get started. You don't have to be finished.
Oh, right.
You do not have to. You do not have to have a rough draft ready to turn in to send to us before you get started. So that's, I think, something that holds a lot of writers up, is because they think that they have to be completely done. In fact, I think it's actually better if you're not finished with it, so that we can give you these tips one-on-one during those consultations,
and we can coach you through it
yes,
as well.
Yes.
Because sometimes you get bogged down and you want to write, and you get stuck, and we can help you through that.
Yes.
So
we would love to help you through that.
Yeah, because that's what we do.
That's what we do as the writer's therapist. And you know what? Side note, we don't have the right, we don't have our writer's therapy piece. So we were market leaders today.
We were. We are market leaders.
Yes.
We are leading the editing market today.
Yes, there you go.
Very proud of that. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, listen, y'all have a great week. We'll see you next Thursday.
Bye.
I'm Dr. Charli, the Book Mama.
And I'm Stephanie Palmer, the Grammar Queen.